Thank you everyone who's joined us this evening. I'm your host Rebecca, and today we're going to be covering the topic legal careers obtaining work experience. Today I'm very pleased to announce that we have 4 wonderful guest speakers joining us today. It would be lovely if you could all go around and just briefly introduce yourselves to our audience today.
I'll go first. I'm Holly. I'm Head of Corporate Commercial for Wilson Brown Solicitors, which is based in Northamptonshire.
Hi, I'm Daniel. I'm a partner in the Serious Injury Department at Hodge Jones and Allen.
I'm Shahedur Rohman. I'm an associate solicitor at VWV and based in Bristol.
And I'm Gemma. I'm a paralegal and aspiring solicitor working in a family law firm, Fuller's Family Law.
Let's get started. For those who are not familiar with Law Training Centre, a bit of background. Our head office is in the United Kingdom, virtual office in Kent. However, we specialise in delivering online accredited legal courses which are accessible all around the world. We're actually the first provider globally to be accredited by the main awarding bodies for legal qualification. Our passion lies in opening up alternative pathways into the legal profession. We recognise that there are challenges of balancing work, family and education, so all our courses are all designed to be flexible, self-paced and guided by expert tutors and practitioners in the field. We therefore offer a variety of legal courses to support alternative routes into law, such as the CLC qualifications to become licensed conveyancers or probate practitioners, the SILEX Legacy and CPQ qualifications to become a chartered legal executive or SILEX lawyer, NAP qualifications for those who want to practice as licensed paralegals, our notarial academic courses to put you on the pathway to becoming a notary, and then we also offer various short legal courses as either a refresher or an introduction into different areas of law. So all these courses offer diverse entry points into the legal field, catering to a range of career aspirations. It's important to note that various paths within the field of law often necessitate a certain level of qualifying work experience. Now, these experiences are not only valuable for professional growth, but they also play an important role in meeting the requirements of your chosen field. Law Training Centre is in partnership with the Access Law Clinic, which is an online clinic that provides valuable pro bono work experience with practicing lawyers and solicitors by assisting those that otherwise may not be able to access legal advice, while at the same time approving qualifying work experience for SQE candidates. So we're now going to hear from our guest speakers today, who will give us some insights into their journey and just other ways on how to gain work experience. It would be great if we could just go around just to explain a bit more details about your current role.
Hi, I'm Daniel. So what I currently do is I'm a partner in the Serious Injury Department at Hodge Jones and Allen. And basically what I do is I represent people who suffered life-changing injuries as a result of suffering from an accident. So the type of injuries I would handle be things such as serious brain injuries, spinal cord injuries, amputations, serious orthopedic injuries, and serious psychiatric conditions. The types of cases I get would be road traffic accidents, people who suffered accidents at work or in a public place, any people who suffered an accident due to a defective product or due to a problem on the highway or highway maintenance. So that's the type of cases that I do. Yeah, so that's me basically at the moment.
Really good. I don't know who wants to go next.
I'll go next.
Perfect.
I'm Head of Corporate Commercial Law for Wilson Brown and a partner. So that's really wide and broad in terms of the law that we cover. So we help businesses from starting up a business, so advising on different business structures, whether you're a partnership, whether you're a sole trader, whether you need to incorporate a company, how that structure then looks and what legal documents you need to be able to run your business, what your terms and conditions look like, what your website T's and C's look like, what that little cookies policy needs to contain that pops up on everyone's screen all the time. So the terms and conditions of trade, how to run a business and compliance, right through to dealing with employee share schemes, growth strategies for your business, how to scale up, how to deal with procuring funding and the legal documents around loans, for example, security documents, right through to selling your business and succession planning or acquiring other businesses. So it's really quite a broad scope. So I've got a team behind me that work very closely together and also very closely with other departments. So we've got an employment team, a commercial property team, a litigation team that all work together to support businesses. So that's a bit more about me and what we do.
Fantastic. Gemma, do you want to go next?
Yeah, no problem. So as I said, I'm a paralegal at Fuller's Family Law. We specialise in family matters, predominantly matrimonial matters, so divorce, finances being settled on divorce, children matters. We also do injunction matters, so that's non-molestation, occupational orders. And then the, types of cases that the solicitors at our law firm work on will range from smaller asset cases, and then we do have some solicitors that do work on high net worth cases and international matters as well.
Perfect. Thank you. And Shahedur?
So I work within the field of education, and as an associate solicitor, I work mainly with independent schools, where I predominantly work within contractual disputes, of course, a kind of broad spectrum on a number of matters. Again, the particular matters can vary from day to day, whether it be dealing from something very straightforward to something very complex, and managing the client relation kind of from start to finish. I also supervise a team of junior lawyers as well, so there's a fair amount of development involved, supervising a team of paralegals, chartered legal executives, trainees as well. So it's nice to kind of be on that spectrum and be there as a mentor to manage through contractual issues and provide another aspect of my kind of service in terms of business development as well. So help to shape policy on a much more wider scale, and working with other departments in terms of shaping their aspects and their offering as well. And the firm that I work for works kind of a broad spectrum, but is renowned for kind of education and charity work as well.
Perfect. Thank you. So it's amazing to see that we have just such a diverse panel today. But I was quite curious, what was your first experience inside the field and how it sort of led to your current role?
I was the first in my family to go to university, let alone to pursue a career in law. So I didn't really have anyone to look up to, so to speak. But I think my first experience was hearing about a family friend who did work in family law, and I studied it in sixth form, quite enjoyed it, got good results on it as well. So I thought, okay, maybe there's something here that I should look at. So my first experience was then getting in contact with this family friend and shadowing her while she was working on her family cases.
Perfect. What about you, Holly? You were going to say something.
So my first actual exposure to the law and legal work experience was actually in criminal law. So when I was 16, I was lucky enough to do a work placement for a couple of weeks working within a criminal law department, which is obviously very different to what I do now. But that sort of got me inspired and into the law. I was then an outside clerk on a couple of cases for them, and then got more involved, did more work experience with the same firm, actually in their child and in the family division. So my early exposure was in a very different area of law to what I'm in now. And when I was at university, most of my electives were sort of driven around that as well. And that was what I enjoyed and what I thought I would end up working in. And then when I'd done my LPC, there was a vacancy for a paralegal in a corporate team. And I spoke to my parents and they're like, well, have an open mind. So I had an open mind. I went for the role, and I fortunately got it. And it just sort of clicked and fell into place, and I really enjoyed it. And whilst I had enjoyed the other areas of law, it really suddenly just made sense to me. It was an area that I've been very strong at in my LPC. I did very well in my business module, and I've now been working in that sector for 10 years, and I love it, and I still love it, and I still love doing share deals and driving things through. So I guess a bit of advice I would say is go to it with an open mind as well. Like when you're getting work experience, don't have a closed mind, have an open mind, because you never know what might actually take for you.
Definitely. Thank you. Daniel, did you want to go next?
Sure. So when I was 16, I actually did work experience with lots of different types of law firms, both private practice and also in-house as well. So I wasn't sure which area of law I wanted to specialise in. And one of the companies that I did work experience for did personal injury, and I really enjoyed it. But my advice would be to get as much work experience as you can prior to getting a training contract, because the market now is very competitive. There appears to be less and less law firms now giving out training contracts, And also it gives you the opportunity to work out exactly what area of law you'd like to specialise in. And I think now the emphasis is now it's becoming more and more important to specialise in a particular area of law, whereas before it used to be quite general. But I basically went to something like 10 different law firms and work placements similar to what Holly was describing. I decided I wanted to do litigation. I like all of the arguing involving litigation. And I applied for a trade union law firm. I looked in Chambers and Partners and Legal 500, which are the two main legal directories which determine which the best law firms are in each particular area of law. And I noticed this firm, when an article came out in the Gazette, had a top ranking, and I applied to them, and that was effectively my first breakthrough in my career.
Great, thank you. And Shahedur?
First, it was really great to hear from the experiences for all the guest speakers. It's always amazing and inspiring to hear from others and learn about their journeys. In terms of my journey itself, it started off with a 1-week work experience with an immigration barrister in London. I was very lucky to have secured that. I remember, and that was actually when I started college, because I remember when I was at school, I was always trying to get the work experience with law firms, and I just wasn't getting it. So to be able to get that 1 week was amazing, especially in London and traveling around with the barrister. It was just amazing, just seeing the legal arguments unfold, seeing his client care skills, being in the court. It was just fascinating to me. But of course, from there, obviously, it's radically different to what I'm doing today. And going by kind of what Daniel said, it's really important to get so much variety in your work experience, because looking back on my career, it's kind of what I did to get to where I was just soak up as much experience from different places that you can. Because following on from that, I remember getting experience with a personal injury law firm, with an immigration practitioner, in-house with the council. But even after that, it took a while to be able to get your foot in the door, because the market for training contracts is so competitive. So, and even so for paralegal roles. So it really did take a while to kind of polish yourself and get yourself ready and geared in a position to get that first role. And I remember having to, when I was after the LPC, in between working for a bank and then shifting my hours so I can spend the mornings doing some work experience with a race equality council, working on discrimination claims before I could get like that, my foot in with a legal role. And of course, that then led me to get my first paralegal role. And yeah, it just kind of rolled on from there. But yeah, a lot of it's I know people don't like hearing this, but sometimes it does come down to luck. But other times you've got to create your own luck as well, and just create the opportunity and the environment in your mind frame so that you're open to keep yourself open to such opportunities. But yeah, sorry, I might have gone beyond the initial question that you asked me.
No,
So
no,
I just couldn't help it after hearing from my other guest speakers. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's great because all of you touched on really good points, especially I think Daniel, you mentioned just about the competitive nature of the legal field and how, training contracts are so hard to obtain. I think that's why a lot of people are now seeking alternative pathways where you don't need that training contract because it's been such a barrier. But even that in mind, I think we can all agree that the legal market is definitely just challenging in general. I mean, in the recent years, there's been concerns about it being oversaturated, just like with if you look at the pipeline, a lot of students now are considering law degrees or considering legal education and wants to actually join the profession in general. So it is still competitive. So my question for people who are starting, because you've all had your different methods of joining, whether that's shadowing or, doing a work placement at a couple of firms. But in terms of the approach on where to begin to actually search for work placements, I think we get quite a lot of people that are at that stage and they're like, oh gosh, I don't know where to search. Is it LinkedIn? Is it Indeed.com? Where do I begin my search? So I just wanted to know from you guys' opinion or just an advice on where those people can start looking for placements.
Happy to jump in first, if
Yeah,
that's
sure.
okay. I guess you got to start just really with the base. I guess just keep it small at first, because getting work experience is just challenging enough. And so for me, what worked was using the Law Society Find a Solicitor section to look for local lawyers around my area within a certain radius. And that was really helpful. So you just look at the law firms around your area and just kind of make a list and just start approaching that, making those kind of initial approaches. And of course, from that website, from that, knowing that initial firm is that firm is there, you can do your searches around that firm, look at the individuals, the type of work they do, and just maybe find something that you think you can connect with as your kind of opening line. So I thought that was really good. I used to use a site called lawcareers.net, which basically published all the kind of training contracts that were there. But I guess, using Law Society, LinkedIn is also really helpful as well, in order to be able to allow you a direct method to kind of connect directly with lawyers in that particular field. So that's really good. And I thought just utilizing family and friends, people that you know and connections, if they know a lawyer, if they know who they've used, and asking if they can give you a soft introduction to that, and just being open to whatever conversations that you can have. And also a part of it down to the brave. You got to be brave and just confident to put yourself out there, just to introduce yourself, say hi, say that you're this is what you're looking for, ask if there's any particular advice that can be offered, and really just keeping it simple will really do wonders.
I've actually covered quite a lot there, Shahedur. Thank you. I don't know if anybody else wanted to add anything onto that.
I'd agree. Keep it local. To start with, look around the local field. Look at what the local law firms are that you can get to. If I get an application from someone from Newcastle, for example, it's not that I wouldn't consider it, but my first question would be, well, it's a long way to go to work. Are you willing to move to Northampton? And what's about, it's a two-way street. And actually, if we're taking someone on, we're looking to invest in someone as well. So why should we invest in you? What are we going to invest in you, as well as what are you going to invest in us? So are we going to invest in you for 2 years and then you're going to go back to Newcastle, back home? That's just a thought process. So keep it local, keep it somewhere that you can get to and somewhere that you want to grow within, because you want to develop your career and your relationship with these people, not just, for 1 year, 2 year, get the experience and go. Think about your future. So I would say keep it local. Lawcareers.net, I use the same. LinkedIn is a whole new tool that we have that we didn't have when I was starting to look 10 years ago, and can be a great way to approach people. But think about your approach. Think about how you come across in that first approach. What's driving you? Think about your attention to detail. I'm sure everyone on the panel would agree that attention to detail comes into all of our jobs. So if you send us an inquiry or reach out to us with the wrong name or with a typo, that will get flagged quite early on. So think about your attention to detail and think about putting forward what it is that you want to put forward about yourself, and why we should invest in you as well as you as in us.
Perfect. Thank you, Holly. I don't know if anybody else wanted to add something to that.
I can add something.
Great.
So I believe in a structured approach, slightly different to what the other two guest speakers were saying. So I would firstly think about what area of law I'll be looking to specialise in when I'm older. I would then go to the Legal 500 directory, but they provide they rank the top law firms in each particular region. And I would go to them, and I would, before I actually do a standard letter approaching them directly, I would look on their website, try and work out what their firm's ethos is, and try and make out that you actually agree with their ethos and stand by the same principles as them. I then ask for a work placement in the same cover letter. Because if your cover letter looks like the same letter which is going to every single law firm, they're going to know you're just doing a mail shot. Whereas if it looks like you've done a bit of research, gone onto their website, tried to find out a little bit more about the ethos of the firm, it shows you're genuinely interested in that particular law firm and you'll stand out a bit more. The other thing I think that's going to be really, really important, which stands out the best candidates from the others, is people who've got commercial acumen. And I've been on a panel where we've had to pick 50 trainee solicitors from 500 by doing an online process. And everybody's very clever and everybody's got a law degree, a very good law degree, and very bright. But what stands the best ones out are ones, A, who've done the research into our company already. Secondly, people who've got a good understanding of the market that you're in and who your competitors are. Those things are really, really important because it gives you that edge on other people who just haven't even thought about that. So I think that's what makes people stand out. It becomes really obvious who the best candidates are based on that. That's my experience.
Great, thank you. Gemma, I don't know if you wanted to add on to that.
If there was an option to tick a box that said all of the above, then I would tick it. I think everyone's sort of highlighted different things that I've definitely done when I've been trying to search for work placements when I was younger. Definitely, I agree with making it local, especially if you're maybe offering, obviously not everyone's in a position to do so, but if you're offering to do volunteer work experience, you want to obviously then keep your travel costs down and things like that as well. Definitely, I Google searching family solicitors near me, and then I did look at the websites, looked at what their values were, and if I felt that they matched up with mine, then they were the sort of companies that I got in contact with.
Great, thanks, Gemma. So I think we all pretty much touched on key parts to look at when we're referring to like CVs and resumes. Like Holly mentioned something about location, and then Daniel mentioned about researching the actual firm and make sure it actually like aligns. So if we're just touching on CVs and resumes, we can all arguably agree that that is like the crucial first step to actually get a glimpse into that person. And, it sort of gives the employer not the full story, because obviously when you interview someone, you can kind of realize just who exactly they are. But if you're just taking it at face value, you look at the CV and that's where you make your first judgment. And that's why I think it's really crucial that a lot of people, because they will be dropping CVs, whether that's by email or hand. But just to touch on the CV, what are some effective ways that people can like tailor their CVs specifically for workplace applications and to make them stand out to potential employers? I know Daniel touched on a few on that, but I was wondering if you guys could elaborate further and add more points to that.
I think for me, one thing that I found quite useful, I would always use keywords that the employers have used, whether that's on their websites or in their bios on the websites. Not just using the keywords, loosely. If you can, think of your own sort of personal experiences that can back up where you've shown that particular skill or that particular approach. I've always found that to be really helpful, because it's all well and good sort of saying you can demonstrate something, but people do like to see proof that you've shown that in the past.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, picking up on that really from what Gemma's just said, if I'm looking at a CV, if you say I've worked at this place, that what you've actually done at that place can be very different to my expectations versus what you did. So tell us more about what you learned from that, what you gained from that, how those skills that you have developed there can then come into play in the role that you're then applying for. And I think one of the hardest things is getting your foot in the door in the first legal work experience. So don't necessarily dismiss non-legal related work experience. So my first ever job was in a shoe store. Now, that is very different from what I do now, but in that shoe store, I learned how to answer the phone. I learned how to deal with customers. I learned how to deal with grumpy customers. I learned how to deal with brides who are buying many shoes for many bridesmaids who can be very demanding. I learned how to deal with cash reconciliation. So all of those other skills you can develop, how to deal with customer service, how to answer the phone. There are skills that you can pull from other work into a legal environment. So have a think about how that can apply to the role that you're then applying for, and what that can add, what value that adds to you, because really what you're doing is putting to us why we should engage with you, really.
Don't know if anybody else wanted to add on there.
I could add something if you know. I think as an employer, what you're looking for is a rounded person and someone who's shown some initiative. So if, for instance, you've been involved in some charitable events, definitely put that on a CV. Put on CV your interests, because when you initially go for work experience, especially the first time, people are also looking for things they can talk about at an interview. When I first applied, actually, my first work experience was working as a sales assistant at Marks and Spencer's on the tills. And I put that on there, and like you said, but my other tip would be that a very good way of drafting your CV would be to do on a separate page, do a list of all the specific work experience you've done to date. And as Holly said, set up what you learned from doing those tasks in bullet form. That's a very easy way to learn. It shows somebody who's got initiative, who's gone out there And also what Holly said, it's really important you put your skills down, even if they seem fairly trivial, such as having a driving license could be important, or computer skills. I'd even suggest in doing an online computer skill, such as a Pitman's typing. Now, you might think we also do Pitman's typing, but nowadays a lot more emphasis on people being self-supporting, and to be able to say you can touch type is of value to an employer in most areas of law you go into, or any other type of business. So that's what I would include.
Great, thanks for that, Daniel. So just to touch on the next stage, because of course, the first step is getting that CV all sorted out and getting the attention of the employer, and then you now move on to like the interview stage, which is where some people tend to struggle. I mean, I deal with inquiries on a daily basis from learners from all backgrounds, whether that is actual seasoned people in their careers looking to take a step up, or just the beginner, and they've all like mentioned that struggle with actually getting past that interview stage. So just for those who are listening and may be struggling with the interview process, are there any specific questions that you would say candidates should be prepared to answer during interviews? I know that it's not set in stone and each interviewer or recruiter can ask different things, but is there anything basically that they should be prepared to answer for?
I think some of the common questions you come across, well, that I've come across, at least from both sides of the table, would be, tell us a time when you've had to work under pressure. You've had to deal with a deadline. Okay, how did you react? How did you deal with it? What did you do? Okay, and sometimes some people say, and that might come across as a competency question or as a general chat. Depends on the format of the interview. So you might use the STAR approach: situation, task, action, responsibility. Another one would be maybe tell us a time when you've had to receive feedback that you didn't agree with. And that's also a very interesting question, quite a telling one for the employer, because they want to see how you dealing with instructions or being told to do something that you don't particularly agree with, or if you have a different way of doing it, or if they mark up your work, how would you manage that feedback? Because what employers want to know is how can they manage you, how can they develop you, and can they work with you? Because that's the thing, that's the key question at the back of their mind is, can they work with the person that's sitting in front of them? Can they invest that time?
Is there anybody that can add any sort of tips on how to prepare for interviews?
Be prepared to answer questions on your CV. Be prepared to be challenged on it. If there's a gap in there because you stopped work in November last year and you're now applying for a job in June the following year, what have you done in that period? Where have you been? What have you been up to? If you say that you've worked in a particular place, in a particular area of law, or developed skills, be prepared to be challenged on that and asked about it, because that is part, the CV is just a window. When we then interview you, we want to know more about you. We will push to challenge and see, if it's someone that we can work with, and see, sometimes just ascertaining on where you're at, so we know where your starting point would be for us to then invest and help you grow as well. And a lot of the time I actually start interviews just by saying, tell me about yourself. So be prepared for very open questions as well. Just tell me about yourself and what you're going to say and what you want to put across.
Fantastic. I just wanted to ask, are there any sort of like common mistakes or misconceptions that individuals should like be aware of when seeking work placements, and how they can avoid those pitfalls?
So when you go for the interview process, there's certain techniques that you ought to adopt. So you have to think that you're effectively being watched from the time you step through the doors of the office. So it's really important you're very polite to the person behind reception, because they might ask feedback from them. When you're asked to go into the room, it's important that you shake somebody's hand firmly, not limply. You don't sit down until you're asked to take a seat. Basic etiquette. I think the first question I would normally ask anybody is, why have you chosen to apply for work placement here? It's the most obvious question to ask, because you're just testing whether candidates just sent their CV to any person, whether they've actually done some proper research and preparation, as Holly said, into looking on their website, seeing what the firm's all about. You can tell a lot just from a response to that particular question. I go back to commercial acumen again, but I still think it's also good to have a bit of knowledge about who the competitors are. When we have applications for trainee solicitors and they get through to the interview one-to-one process, one of the first questions is, what areas of law do you want to practice in for your training seat, because obviously there's 3 or 4 areas. Half the people don't choose areas we don't even know in the firm, so we haven't researched us properly. The next question is, who would you consider to be our competitors? The amount of potential candidates who can't answer that question is startling, really, because you think it's quite a basic thing you'd expect them to know. So it's that, Holly, so make sure your prep's thorough, because it will come out if your prep's not thorough. But if your prep is thorough and you've got that bit of commercial acumen, you stand a really good chance of getting your position. What they're looking for is a rounded person with some commercial acumen. That's the ideal.
Great points, Daniel. So does anyone want to add on to that? Any sort of mistakes or pitfalls people make during the interview process and how they can avoid it?
It's really about learning to be comfortable in your own skin and just prepping yourself, and ways that you can manage that, of course, is as one of the speakers said, about getting to know your CV and anticipating any questions that might come up about any gaps, and especially about your interests as well. And if you're asked to elaborate on any of your experiences today as to why that's relevant. But another trick that could be used is perhaps even asking a friend, someone who's worked within the profession, or anyone else, or a tutor, if they could happily just go through some kind of mock interview with you, whether through Zoom or in person, or practice in front of a mirror in terms of delivering your answers. If you're asked any of those questions, how you're going to respond. And I guess what a mirror is also good at, because it also allows you to see how your facial expressions are and how you deliver your answers and how that presents itself. It may seem a bit quite narcissistic, but when you're investing time in a very career-changing process, one that can really make your life, then it doesn't hurt to invest that time in strengthening your confidence and your method of delivery.
Fantastic. Thanks, Shahedur. Gemma, don't know if you want to add anything before we move on.
I think, to be honest, that's the main thing, is just being confident in yourself, being brave enough to talk about yourself. At the end of the day, the employer, they know all about themselves. They want to know who they're employing. So just be ready to talk about your own personal experiences.
Fantastic. So for the people joining us tonight that might be curious, does any of your firms offer work experience opportunities? And if so, how can people go about applying for those?
So send a flyer out to universities, and it's work experience for a whole year as a legal clerk in the personal injury department, but it's for people who are doing sandwich courses, law degrees, and they spend the year out at our firm doing legal clerk stuff in the personal injury department. They'll do all sorts of different tasks and chores. It's not just photocopying, it'll be proper involvement in the personal injury cases. So people apply in December. It's a 2-interview process, and the contracts start in June and last 1 year. So we take 6 per year. So this year we've taken 5 from Brunel University and 1 from Nottingham Trent. Also, I think my firm will be happy to offer somebody a week's work shadowing. If that's something somebody wanted to apply to, I'm more than happy for someone to shadow me for a week.
Thanks, Daniel. Holly, I'm not sure if Wilson Brown has any experience placement initiatives.
Not specific placements. We have had people come and shadow on occasion, or come in and work with solicitors. What I would say is we do have a lot of opportunities to get into the law and get into the firm. Don't necessarily just look for a training contract position, because most firms, particularly regional or high street, will require you to work as a paralegal first. But we have opportunities in our new inquiries team. We have opportunities for admin support. We have opportunities for paralegals. As Daniel just alluded to, admin doesn't necessarily mean you're just photocopying. You can still be working in admin, but actually very heavily involved in managing caseloads, managing files, and working closely with a fee earner. So that's one way to get your foot in the door and then be able to work somewhere. I mean, we've currently, I've got around 21 current and future trainees position available. So we do certainly invest in people, but look and see. We've published all of our opportunities on our website. Look and see what's on there, and if there's anything that would apply to you and that would interest you.
Perfect. Thank you, Ollie. I don't know if anybody else wanted to add on to that.
I was going to say, at my firm, so we have vacation placements or vacation schemes, which is used kind of as a precursor for those wanting to commit to applying for a training contract. And there's a very transparent process which allows for placements to take place in either our London, Watford or Bristol offices. And so you usually spend a week in that office within different departments, and then that will be followed up by an interview to see whether you'd be offered a training contract or qualifying work experience, as it's now termed.
Fantastic. Gemma?
Yeah, I mean, our firm, we don't offer specific placements, but we do take work experience. If people are interested in that, then it's just simply a case of going on our website, emailing the sort of general inquiry email, or if you can find an email on the website, mine's on there to be fair, then you can always just pop someone an email, let them know that you're interested and you'd like to arrange something. I'm sure that an informal can be arranged to sort something out.
Fantastic. Thanks, Gemma. One thing I wanted to touch on with you, Gemma, is just the aspect of balancing work experience and studying, because I believe you're currently studying online the SQE prep course with us. So there might be a few people on the call who are just a bit worried about how can they juggle both studies and work experience. So I just wanted to get any sort of tips and advice you can give people on how they can balance their academic commitments alongside gaining work experience.
To be honest, it's probably a lesson that I'm still learning myself anyway. I guess the way that I navigated it during university, I would, although it's not quite the same, but I would do my, and then during summer, that's when I would fill up my 6 weeks with as much experience as I could get. So whether that was sort of doing full-time work experience over the summer period, don't spread yourself thin. To do lots of different things, just try and hone in on what you're interested in, where your passion is, and then at least you can focus your time and attention to those specific areas. Whilst definitely, I guess in a way playing the field. I know I've done work in a criminal law firm and an employment law firm, wills and probate before, family, because I think as the other speakers have said, you need to kind of play the field to see what actually in practice works for you well, because learning it in a textbook is very different to practically. I think make use of a calendar. I think, as silly as it sounds, that's probably the most important app that I have in my phone, and it's the only way I can make sure I keep on top of everything. And even if it's just setting appointments with yourself, an hour to do studying or an hour researching law firms to see where you might want to apply and things like that, definitely make use of that tool.
So just to wrap up, because I'm just bit cautious of the time, I just wanted to know from each of you what would be your final piece of advice or words of encouragement for individuals who are looking to pursue a career in law and eager to gain valuable work experience.
This can sound really obvious. Be honest with yourself and be honest with the people that you're talking with and interviewing with, because you'll see through it very quickly if you're not being honest, if you've padded your CV, if there's any issues. So just be honest and be honest about what's right for you, because it's not just about getting a job, it's about getting the right job where you can develop your career in the right place for you. So be honest with yourself about what you want, where you want to be, and be honest with us as well.
Brilliant. Is there any sort of key advice you would want people to take away today? Anyone?
I would say be resilient. There's going to be bumps in the road. It's going to be a law of averages. Everyone gets knockbacks. People don't like to talk about their knockbacks, but rest assured, everyone gets knockbacks and rejections. Just keep going. I probably applied for maybe 40 or 50 firms having reject letters before I eventually got some interviews. And if you think something's, change it a little bit, tweak it. If you are converting your applications into interviews, and obviously you know that your CV is very good, if you're just getting rejected every time, then have a look at your CV again, see any grammatical errors, see if there's anything you could add that may be relevant that gives you an edge over others.
Perfect, thanks. Shahedur?
For me, I think resilience is really key. And just because you've not succeeded in one way, don't think there won't be another way in which you can progress. If you've made an application to a firm that was your dream firm and you didn't get what you want, not a problem. If you're not sure about the firm, then reach out to them directly. Whether it be the secretary, the HR person, one of the partners, via LinkedIn, send a request and just be honest and say, I want to know more about what you're doing. I think, and it's really important because even as professionals, we're always, when there's a vacancy in our team, first thing we're asked is, do you know someone? And you know what? If you put yourself at that person's forefront of their kind of the top of their mind because you've taken the time to build a relationship, show show that you're interested, then, you're creating that, that window of opportunity for yourself. So take those steps, be direct, and don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Use it, if you're one of those people that have lots of legal professionals on your LinkedIn connections, take that time just to say hello. Say hello, how are you doing? And just find a key way just to build a rapport. And that's really important. Focus on those skills, focus on yourself. And if you have interests, things that just make you excited about life, then focus on them and don't be afraid to talk about them. If you're interested in sports, if you're interested in cricket, obstacle course racing, or whatever it is that really gets you out of bed, then think about why that's so exciting. And don't be afraid to just include that when you're delivering an answer about dealing with resilience, dealing with knockbacks, dealing with something that you think is just somehow transferable. And, if your experience is limited in terms of law, then of course, feel free to draw on something non-legal, whether you've worked in a restaurant. I've worked in an Indian takeaway, families and whatnot. And that's taught me a great deal about life, how to deal with people, how to manage difficult conversations, how to deal with pressure, okay? And how to deal with odd characters, because I guarantee you in this profession, you will deal with odd characters. You have to have awkward conversations all the time. Well, hopefully not all the time, but, maybe more than most. And so you've got to be able to deal with that. And it's just amazing. And this is and when you enjoy yourself, start yourself on this career, there's just so much to it. And you just got to make sure that you invest the time in yourself. And by gaining that wide experience, make sure that this is the right one for you. And that's important because life is short, as they say. And make sure, and if you're going to spend it doing something, then make sure it's something you enjoy.
Great. Fantastic advice from you guys. Thank you for tuning into the Legal Navigator podcast. We hope you found today's episode informative and engaging. If you have any questions or need more information, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can send us an email at info@ltckent.co.uk or visit our website at ltckent.co.uk. Until next time, stay tuned for more episodes.